Hi and welcome to today's training, How to Become Known as a Thought Leader Through Podcasting. And I'm Anne-Marie Cross, the Podcasting Queen. So in today's training, you'll learn how to address 2 unhelpful mindsets that'll stop you from building your thought leadership, specifically with a podcast. What is a podcast? We'll talk about that briefly. We'll also cover the benefits of a podcast, particularly when we compare it to videos as well as blogs and articles. And we'll finish up by identifying 3 key strategies to help you become a thought leader through harnessing the power of podcasting. So who am I? Who is Anne-Marie Cross? And why am I the person to listen to when it comes to building a strong personal brand, your thought leadership, and harnessing a podcast to be able to do that? And started podcasting back in 2008. So goodness, nearly 10 years in podcasting experience. And over those years, I've been called the Podcasting Queen. I am the CEO and founder of the Ambitious Entrepreneur Network. We host and produce and publish a number of podcasts for clients and for some of our alliance partners. And over the years, I've co-hosted and co-produced a number of various podcasts, as well as mentoring and hosting and promoting other podcasts for clients as well. So not only have I been involved in the creation and the hosting of podcasts, I've really been able to take a step back and look at a podcast as being a platform where you can really leverage to build your message and take it out into the world in a far bigger way than you would have ever thought possible if you were just relying on very important things in our business, networking and speaking and sharing our message that way. So I've really been able to harness what I've learned over the years in branding, communication and online and digital, and how to become an influential voice in your industry, and align that and harness that with the power of podcasting to really create a strong voice and a strong positioning. And that's some of the things that I want to share with you today. But firstly, we need to address the elephants in the room. And this is 2 unhelpful mindsets, something that I hear time and time again when I'm speaking to incredible women who really do have an incredible message to share, yet they haven't really stepped out to do so because of this particular mindset we're going to talk about first. What do I possibly have to share that can position me as a thought leader in my industry, or otherwise else known as the imposter syndrome? I mean, how many of us keep ourselves playing small, not really stepping out in a bigger way because we don't really believe that what we have to share really deserves that higher platform? Why are we any better or any different to what everybody else is speaking in our industry? And I went on to Google and I found a meaning of thought leadership, which I wanted to share with you today. Informed opinions of the go-to people in their field of expertise. We move and inspire people with innovative ideas. We turn ideas into reality, and we know and we show how to replicate the success. That's what a thought leader does. And I'm sure if you're honest with yourself, the amount of experience that you've gained, qualifications or maybe hands-on learning and experience on the ground has given you unique strengths and gifts, insight, oversight, foresight into you being able to really share expertise that can help your clients get out of struggle and into whatever it is that they're looking to achieve. So why are you not able, or why are you not the person who other people can turn to, can see as the go-to person in your area of expertise? But the most important thing to realize moving forward and really wanting to position yourself as a thought leader, if you don't see yourself as a thought leader or someone who can contribute innovative ideas, that can contribute a level of expertise that can really help people shift through their stuckness, shift through and achieve what they're wanting to achieve far quicker, far more conveniently for them through harnessing your expertise, then it's going to be very difficult for you really to showcase that. If you don't believe it, it's going to be very hard for other people to sense that. So do some check-in. Am I, perhaps ask yourself, am I preventing myself from really showing up powerfully and confidently because I don't really yet see myself as a thought leader? So you need to do some journaling and some consideration around that. The second unhelpful mindset is the belief that you might have around podcasting. And here's some typical statements that I often hear. The technology is too hard to learn. Yes, there is some technology. Yes, there are some processes that need to be done post and pre editing of your podcast. But guess what? As a thought leader, you really should not be investing your time and energy in doing all of the post production and all of the sharing and all that kind of stuff. You should be hiring a team to support you so that you can continue to share your message, record your message, and get it out there. And connect with people that you want to interview on your podcast if that's the format that you want to use. You should not even be worrying about technology. You need to focus on where your expertise is and hire people and outsource for people who are experts in that particular area. Secondly, this is another one that I heard just recently, in fact. Why would people listen to me? This really stems a little bit around what we spoke about earlier, and being the imposter syndrome. In fact, I was just doing an interview, and I was being interviewed alongside another woman who identified her expertise was around shifting through fear. She now has a podcast, but she was saying years beforehand, before she even got to launch her podcast, she would often say, why would people listen to me? And a lot of the other aspects that I'm going to share with you in a moment. Yet now she realized that this was an unhelpful mindset, and thank goodness she launched her podcast. I haven't got time to do a regular podcast. Well, guess what? You don't have to do a regular one. You create a series that you continue to leverage as part of your credibility building, your influence building, and really getting your message out there. And I'll share a little bit more about how my clients are doing that and how you can do that too in a moment. Why would guests want to come on my show? Another imposter syndrome. Why would they not want to come on your show? If you are showcasing other experts, other key influencers who have similar viewpoints, or who can really add value, or maybe even another point of view to really start debating around your area of expertise, the topic, that your podcast is seen in that platform as really delivering great value, great content. Again, you need to start to change that mindset, change that belief around why wouldn't they want to come on your show, and really start to have a debate around the topic of expertise that you want to bring to the world. And lastly, how do I come up with some topic ideas? Well, that was something that one of my clients that has just gone through the Podcasting with Purpose training that I offer. She has got 26 solid ideas, which is a year's worth of podcasts that she has mapped out and planned. She's going to do a bi-monthly show that's every fortnight. She's come up with 26 great topics. If this is something that you're thinking, you can eliminate that off your worry list, because there's just ways around that you can come up with great topics and have a consistent podcast or a great series that can continue to position you as that thought leader. So hopefully those two mindsets, we've been able to shift those for you so that we can now step into really finding out what's a podcast, how can you leverage this in your business to really move forward and position yourself as the thought leader that we know you are. So a podcast really is just simply, it's a digital audio file that's made available on the internet that people can download to a computer, a mobile device, and it's typically a series or new installments, like week to week or bi-monthly, that people can receive automatically because they've subscribed to it. That's the beauty of a podcast. When someone subscribes to it on their smartphone, they don't need to rely on themselves to go and check to see if something new is available. It automatically gets pushed to their device and they get a little notification. Brilliant these days, especially when we think that our ideal clients are so busy. They get a nice little message to say, hey, such and such a podcast has just been updated. Let's have a look at some of the benefits of podcasting versus video, blogs, and articles. And I often am asked the question, which is better? Which should I be doing? They are all fantastic and they can generate great results when they are done well. But here's some interesting comparisons. There was an author who wrote an ebook, and what he did was he wrote one article, so one blog post, and he had one interview on a podcast. He sold 5 times as many ebooks from the podcast interview versus the blog post that he did. And I'll share in a moment why I think that is so. Now, Michael Hyatt, he is a leadership mentor and one of my current mentors. And when he was doing his podcast, he was recording it in audio version and video version. It was interesting that he only got 10% of video views of his video podcast in comparison to his audio podcast. And he no longer produced the video. I do believe now he's doing Facebook Lives, which of course is a completely different medium too. Great medium. And I'll share with you in a moment later on how we're going to be using that, how my team and I are going to be using that when we produce our podcasts as well, to really leverage and repurpose this content. So here's why I think, people are really starting to consume far more podcasts, the audio podcasts, versus say video and blog posts and articles. I think that's because we're all very, very busy. And I know for most of us who have, ideal clients as CEOs or senior executives, they are so busy. They do not have time to watch long videos or read long blog posts and articles. Another aspect of articles and blog posts is that we do tend to scan these quite quickly. So there's less opportunity for that real engagement. The reader doesn't really get a true sense of who you are, because reading an article, they bring their own communication styles and their own preferences, their own assumptions to that communication. Whereas if they hear your podcast, they can hear you laughing. They can hear when you take a pause. That pregnant pause that can often really do incredible things for shifting people's thought patterns. They can't hear you laugh, or when you're creating a bit of intensity by talking quickly. They can't hear the inflection in your voice. But they can on a podcast, and you can take them on a journey. Just like I'm sure when we recall back to our childhood, when we were read stories, didn't you love them? Especially when you had a really good storyteller that their voice just took you on that journey. Similarly, I'm sure we all have those horror stories where someone was reading us a story and they were quite boring because they didn't have the pitch and the tone and the intensity of their voice. But that's what you'll find. People are far more able now to listen to podcasts because it's a secondary activity. And I heard the term used, passive consumption. People can listen to the podcast while they're driving, while they're commuting, while they're doing housework, that kind of thing. Busy people tend to consume things that are not going to take up a lot of time. And I've got a number of videographers who are my colleagues, and they always recommend that you keep your video short and to the point, no more than 2 minutes. Now, when you compare that to our podcasts on the Ambitious Entrepreneur Network, they typically are around 20 to 30 minutes in length. Now, let me ask you a question. What other platform enables you to spend 30 minutes a week with your consumers or with your potential consumers, hearing your voice, engaging with you, carrying you around on their mobile device while they're involved in their personal activities? That's their precious personal time, because studies show all over the world that people tend to consume podcasts in their personal time that you get to spend with your ideal client. That, for marketers, for us as thought leaders, is just incredible to think that we can share our message with our ideal client in their personal time and get to hang out with them on a regular basis. In fact, one of my now VIP clients, she came to know me at a networking event. She subscribed to my podcast, Women in Leadership. She listened to one episode and then messaged me on LinkedIn and said, I just laughed out loud when I heard the last show and the guest. And this is her words, I cannot wait to subscribe to your podcast and binge listen. At that time, I had 65 other podcasts there, times 30 minutes. That's a lot of time she was going to spend with me. And now she is a VIP client, and that's a multi-4-figure package. And she's starting her own podcast and already has had incredible results just in phase 1. And I'll share a little bit more. Podcasts and the way that you use it and the strategy that you put behind it can deliver incredible results. Just some successes that I've experienced. I'm going to go through these really quickly. I've secured clients, Women in Leadership, 3 episodes only. I got 2 high-level clients, and this one that I just mentioned, this was a completely different one. People listen and they get to know, like, and trust you to the point that when they contact you, it really doesn't take too much to enroll them because they already really can see the value you offer. I've had speaking opportunities at global summits alongside other multi-6 and 7-figure business experts. I've seen my influence and reach grown exponentially. And my very first podcast was listened to in over 100 countries. My digital online footprint, my podcast has been the cornerstone, caught the attention of Microsoft, and I was a Surface brand ambassador for over 12 months. Just recently, at networking events, people will hear my name and they'll say, "Oh, I've been listening to your podcast. We need to talk." This happens consistently, and I know that that's because my voice is out there being shared. My voice is listened to across, various platforms. This can happen to you as you're continuing to build your thought leadership. Benefits of audio podcasts when they are done well: captures and retains attention, enables a deeper engagement, maintains longer attention spans, enables top of mind awareness to avoid leakage to competitors, which we know a lot of companies are struggling with, reinforces commitment to a company's brand, increases willingness to consider products and services, and increases attention across a company's social media platforms. Again, all validated by various statistics that is being done on a regular basis. Now, as a business owner who not only wants to really build their thought leadership as the go-to person in your industry, if any one of those things or more than one of those things is something that you're looking for, I can highly recommend create a podcast or a podcast series. All right, let's dive into some of these key strategies. Key strategy number 1. Your thought leader personal brand. If you really want to leverage podcasting as a way to build awareness as an authority in your field, then you need to define and have clearly understood and continuing to communicate your thought leader personal brand. Just something that was really important that was mentioned to me not so long ago when I went and did some sales training. The expert there was saying that studies showed that 57% of the buyer's decision is made already online. Now, you imagine if you've got a strong thought leader personal brand and a great podcast series that's really showcasing your expertise, by the time they get to ring you or connect with you, they've already made up their mind, or 57% of the way there already. So, your follow-up and your nurturing system and strategy really accelerates that. But anyway, let's talk about your thought leader personal brand. Do you have clearly defined your core values? What are your core values? What do you stand for? And is this captured in your message? It's so important that it is. And can you list your top 3 authentic and distinguishable personal brand elements? If you can't, I really encourage you to spend some time defining that. Before I even launch or help my clients come up with their podcast strategy, we spend time in identifying their thought leader personal brand. What are their core values? Capturing that in their message to make sure that they're consistently positioning themselves as the go-to person in their industry. And their top 3 authentic and distinguishable personal brand elements, when they incorporate that into their message, they can really position themselves as that distinguishable expert because it's creating this experience. So if I think about my core values, it's about excellence, it's about disruption, innovation, creativity, fun, boldness, confidence. And that means that throughout my messaging and throughout how I approach, my message and how I deliver my message, those core values very much drive that. If I think about my personal brand elements, what's really important for me is that innovation, is that disruption. I've been defined previously as a change agent, so I am about changing the game and helping others step forward too. That's why be the difference for me is such an important value, because of the fact that, through being the difference, I encourage and I empower other people to do the same. So if you think about yours, what are your core values? What is your message? What do you stand for? What gets you, up? What drives you? And are you consistently showcasing that in your message? Not only in the words that that you share, but also in your attitude, also in your approach. It's really, really important that the experience you create are very much driven by your core values. Are your core values being exuded in how you approach, your podcast, your message, even your written message as well? The key strategy number 2 is your thought leader topic. It really has to be relevant to what your ideal client is looking for. You may have a number of various areas that you can bring expertise to and really have some passionate discussions and reasons why this is so important. But if you look at your existing marketplace or your potential clients, your ideal clients, if they're not talking about it as a need, if they're not struggling with that area, or if you're not able to speak about it in an area that is relative, that relates to what your ideal client is struggling with, then unfortunately your message is just going to sit there not doing much. So you need to do some research in how can you make that message relevant to what your ideal client is looking for. Your message also must be focused. And sometimes what I see, I've done this myself, so I certainly know that this can really detract to your message when you're talking about unrelated topics. And what can end up happening is that you risk being seen as a jack of all trades and a master of none. So you really need to ensure that your message is focused. It very much is niched. It very much is targeted to a core message that consistently is communicated across your podcast, across social media strategies that you're doing, across speaking, across your articles, across blog posts, across videos. Every single time you share a message, it has to have that common thread. It has to have that focus, and it needs to be very relevant to the conversation that your ideal client is looking for. Otherwise, you're not able to be seen as the thought leader in your particular area, in that topic. How can you bring an innovative way of looking at things in your industry? There may be other people that are speaking towards that topic, but you need to take a step back and think about, okay, what are some ways and means by which I can approach it differently? Is there something that I'm doing that is quite unique and quite different from other people speaking about this in my industry? How can I challenge the status quo? What's the same old that our industry is doing that I can speak to quite uniquely? Have I done something differently and consistently that has enabled some of my clients to really accelerate their success? Is there something that's been going on in my industry for some time and people are grumbling about it but are not yet doing anything about it? And can I be the person who picks up that mantle and who starts speaking into that? Remember, sometimes as a thought leader, it means that you really need to step out. And sometimes by doing that, sometimes by disrupting your industry and speaking against something that you know really needs to be addressed in your industry, means that you are going to get criticism. But you know what? That is okay, because you need to think about the end in mind, the difference that you are going to make in your industry, the difference that you are going to make for your clients. And you need to step up forward with courageousness and confidence that you know is going to make a huge difference. So addressing all of these areas and really ensuring that, that what you are speaking to specifically helps your ideal client overcome their struggles. That means that they're going to take notice when you start sharing your message, especially on a podcast or a podcast series. Your message is going to be so focused and on the various topics that you may speak about aligns still with a major topic that really positions you as that expert in your field, as that thought leader in your field, and doesn't spread your message too thin, but rather, solidifies that and creates that tip of the spear. It pierces through the message and allows your message to be really focused and listened to at a huge level, because people are thinking, oh, she's speaking about something quite unique. I need to listen to her. And that innovation around doing things differently, being a game changer, challenging that status quo. When you can do that, you become a thought leader, and that topic pierces through what everybody else is talking about, that clutter, that noise that's going on online. Let's look at key strategy number 3, your thought leader positioning strategy. This is so important. You must map out a cut-through positioning or marketing strategy to enable you to cut through the online noise as well as even the offline noise, the face-to-face as well. There are so many people, other potential thought leaders, and a lot of noise that is really vying attention of our ideal clients. Now, just an example, I think I mentioned it earlier in this training, I had a VIP client that had a CEO of one of the major Australian retailers reach out to her directly, and she was only in phase 1 of her thought leadership podcast positioning strategy. She just could not believe it, but it's that powerful. When you get the right strategy in place, when you get the right steps in place, and you've done everything that we've mentioned just as a starting point, you really do start to position yourself as a thought leader. You really do cut through the noise. You grab people's attention, particularly those key decision makers, and you can cut through, even bypass gatekeepers, which we know is so very hard to do when they're keeping those key decision makers at bay and protecting them from a lot of different calls. She was able to bypass this. Using a podcast interview strategy and doing that well can build a deeper sense of connection and conversation than any other medium. I've been doing this for so long now, and I've been going to a lot of networking events. Now, I have to say and admit that I am actually an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert. So going up to key decision makers and CEOs and other key influencers in a networking event, oh my goodness, I would just be so nervous. But interviewing them and doing it that way on the podcast and building that solid relationship that way is, for me, far more empowering and less scary, to the point where I'm really building that deeper sense of connection conversation. Which is why it's so exciting to be able to share this with you today, and with, of course, my VIP clients who are doing this as well. How are you going to continue to get the word out about your podcast? We need to then leverage other aspects that we're doing as well. Your email signature, your bios, your speaking, as you're continuing to really look at your thought leader positioning strategy. It doesn't just happen once and then you leave it set and forget. It doesn't work that way. Just like any other strategy, you need to have a real cut-through positioning strategy to be able to enable you to cut through that online noise. I want to debunk some myths moving forward, and this really continues to add value to what I've already spoken to you about today, that you don't need to have an ongoing podcast. Create a podcast series. That's what I'm doing alongside some of my VIP clients. They don't have time to do an ongoing one, but what I'm doing with them is really helping them and interviewing them and helping them really position themselves as a thought leader, and having this podcast series that continues to create their credibility, their list growth, and of course, once people are on their list, they continue on their nurturing sequence. So if you are thinking, I don't have time to have an ongoing podcast, consider doing a podcast series. And if you don't want to do that yourself, reach out to me, because this is something that I do with my VIP clients. What you can also do is, if you do have the desire to reach out and interview other existing influencers in your industry, what you can do is build a level of connection that you would never be able to do if you were just speaking with them for a short amount of time at a networking event. Even, in follow-up conversations, interviewing them and really helping them create content that's going to be shared on your podcast. It's incredible. And that'll allow you to potentially build referral or alliance opportunities as well. Now imagine if you could interview potential clients or contacts for their viewpoint on what's happening in the industry and what they've done to overcome some of those challenges. That's exactly what my current VIP client is doing. She's reaching out and she's getting great content for her, for her clients, but she's building that relationship. So once she creates her podcast series as that thought leader and speaks into those challenges with some of the solutions that she's doing with clients, she's going to circle back and reconnect with the people that she's interviewed and allow them to listen to her podcast. Again, positioning herself as a thought leader in her industry. Great strategy, which will work well. Another myth that I'd like to debunk: I'm too busy to think about doing one more thing in my business. Yes, you need to plan out an integrated plan for maximum momentum building. But once you do, you really can leverage exponentially and speed up the whole process and time that you can start to generate results. What are you doing already that's working well to gain exposure? Tap into that with your podcast or your podcast series. Consider integrating your podcast series into existing strategies. For instance, you might already be comfortable with doing videos. Do a short video, then at the end of that video, the call to action is your podcast. Once people start to listen to your podcast series, you encourage them at the call to action to sign up for your Irresistible Signature Giveaway. And to get on to access to your Irresistible Signature Giveaway, they're now on your list, and you've got this fantastic nurturing sequence that continues to build know, like, and trust, to eventually they contact you and you can then enroll them into your program or your consulting packages. Maybe you're already an article writer. Guess what? If your call to action is to take the relationship further and learn even more through your podcast series, again, they'll listen to that, they'll subscribe to that, they'll sign up because the call to action is an Irresistible Signature Giveaway. And then again, they are on your nurturing sequence. Great strategy. Something else that you can do too is to repurpose your content, your podcast content, to increase your thought leadership. So many times we're creating great content and we're not repurposing them. Now imagine if you can transcribe your audio podcast and you create that into a blog. You from there take quotes from your podcast and create that into your graphics and share that across your social media channels. Again, capturing people's attention and gently nurturing them and encouraging them to go and listen to your podcast. And again, once they do that, they subscribe, encouraged to get onto or get access to your Irresistible Signature Giveaway, which means they're on your list and on your nurturing process again. Maybe you might convert your podcast into an MP4 file and then upload that to YouTube. One of the things that I'm going to be doing moving forward is when I record the Ambitious Entrepreneur Show and the Women in Leadership podcast, I'm going to stream that podcast interview directly to Facebook, bloopers and all. Once that resource is finished, once that interview has finished, I'm going to get my team to download that. We're going to edit it. We're going to put the intro and the outro there, and we're going to upload that to YouTube to get even more views on that. And of course, from that original interview, I'm going to create an audio file and share it on iTunes like we already do with all of our podcasts. So we're looking at repurposing content. We're looking at leveraging it, all with the outcome of increasing the awareness around my thought leadership. You can do this too.